I failed. I sat down with 20 years of LSAT teaching experience and tried to write a question so hard no human being could answer it. And I could not do it. The LSAT would not let me. Every time I pushed past a certain level of difficulty, the question just stopped working. It stopped being answerable and stopped being a question at all. And what I found staring at my broken question is going to change how you see every hard problem on the LSAT, because the LSAT has a ceiling. It has a hard ceiling on how difficult it can possibly get. And that ceiling is made of 3 rules the test writers can never break. And those rules don't just limit the test, they make the hardest questions on the entire LSAT the most predictable of all. And I know that sounds insane, but I want you to stay with me. My name is Steve Schwartz. I raised my own LSAT score from a 152 to a 175, and I've been teaching this exam since 2005. But the biggest thing that changed the way I teach was when I sat down and wrote over 1,000 detailed explanations for 1,000 logical reasoning questions, including all 5 answer choices, full breakdowns of every argument and every flaw. And going in, I assumed the hardest questions would be chaos, because that's what everybody assumes. The tough LSAT questions must be wild or unpredictable, off the wall with some brand new trap and some exotic twist you've never seen before. And I was dead wrong. By explanation 200, I noticed something. And by 500, it was undeniable. And by question 1000, it was almost boring. The hardest questions follow the same patterns. And I don't mean similar patterns here. I mean the exact same patterns, with the same reasoning structures, the same answer choice tricks, same linguistic cues across tests, across years, across decades. So I call this the difficulty paradox. The harder an LSAT question gets, the more predictable it becomes. So think, for example, about chess. A beginner's moves will look kind of random with pieces everywhere, no logic to the board. But a chess grandmaster, every move follows deep, recognizable patterns. Openings you can name, structures you can study. The better the player, the more structured the game. The LSAT's hardest questions are studyable. They are grandmaster moves. Now, most LSAT prep ignores this completely. Most prep treats every hard question like a brand new animal. Here's a unique question, here's how to solve this one specific question, good luck on the next one. But that approach keeps you dependent forever, because you're always meeting something new. But the questions aren't actually new. They only look new. Underneath, they are the same machine wearing just different costumes. And so I want to strip the costume off and show you the underlying core. There are 3 rules the LSAT can never break. I call this the question architecture. And I'm going to give you all 3, and then I'm going to walk you through how to see all 3 working at the same time. Rule number 1 is the conclusion lock, because every argument on the LSAT must have a main conclusion you can find. Every single one, no exceptions. Without one, the question doesn't test reasoning, it tests your tolerance for nonsense, and the LSAT doesn't really do nonsense. And so when you hit a wall of jargon with some niche regulation or some obscure philosophical claim, I want you to stop, because there is a conclusion in that argument. By definition, the test writers have to give it to you. You want to find the one claim everything else supports. And the moment you find it, half the complexity disappears instantly. Then rule number 2 is the premise framework. Every sentence must serve a purpose with no throwaway lines. Every premise supports either the conclusion, sets up the gap, or provides context. So I want you to stop reading passively and start reading like you're looking at a blueprint. If you hit a confusing sentence, ask one question. What is this doing? Now, you don't need to be an expert in the topic. You've got to see how the pieces connect. And the rules do guarantee they will connect. Then rule 3, and this is the big one, is the answer choice architecture. Every wrong answer must be wrong for a real defensible reason. And the right answer must hold up to scrutiny. And that puts a hard cap on what can show up in those 5 choices. Now, I tracked every wrong answer type across 1,000 different questions, and I found 7 distinct tricks. That's right, 7. 20 years of exams, 1,000 questions, and only 7 tricks. That is the whole menu. They will, for example, distort the conclusion. They'll bring in something irrelevant. They'll swap a key word, like some becomes all or might becomes will. And they sound smart, but they address the wrong part of the argument. 7 moves, that is it. Now, let me show you how all 3 of these could work inside a single question, because I want you to feel this for yourself. Suppose the LSAT gives you this argument. A study found that students who eat breakfast score higher on exams. Therefore, eating breakfast improves exam performance. Let's lock in on the conclusion. You spot the conclusion immediately. Eating breakfast improves exam performance. Done, that is your anchor. Then you've got the premise framework with one premise. A study found a correlation between breakfast and higher scores. The premise, of course, does support the conclusion, but there's a gap. A big one here. The study found a correlation, and the conclusion is claiming causation. Maybe the students eating breakfast also study more or sleep more. Maybe they come from wealthier households. The argument jumped right over those possibilities. Now let's look at the choices, because before you look at the choices, though, you got to understand what the right answer needs to do. It needs to address that gap between correlation and causation. And you already know what the wrong answers are going to do. There's going to be an answer that says something like, the study did not account for the student's prior academic performance, which sounds smart, sounds related, but it does not address whether breakfast causes higher scores. It just points to a detail the study did not mention. That is the irrelevant detail trick. That is one of the 7 tricks. And you're going to see that exact move in close to half the hard questions you run into. Now, you want to predict the answer before you read a single choice. That takes about 15 seconds. Now, here's the part that really made me angry when I discovered this. That exact flaw, correlation jumping to causation, doesn't show up once on the LSAT. It shows up dozens, if not hundreds of times across different exams in different years with different topics. Sometimes it's breakfast and test scores. Other times it's a new drug and patient outcomes. Sometimes it's advertising spending and revenue. The topic changes every time, but the skeleton underneath is identical. And once you see that, you start to feel cheated, because most LSAT prep, the books, the courses, the tutors, they treat each of these questions like it's unique or a separate puzzle, like it's a separate beast, but it's not. You already solved this question in the past. They just changed the topic and rearranged the furniture. And honestly, this made me rethink how I had been teaching the LSAT, because for years, even I was overcomplicating hard questions for my own students. I was treating the hardest problems as if they demanded something extra, something beyond the fundamentals, but they don't. They only demand that you apply the fundamentals precisely and consistently. And that realization changed my entire approach. The hard version of this question doesn't use a new flaw. It takes that same correlation to causation jump and wraps it in dense technical language. It buries the conclusion in the middle of the paragraph. It adds a conditional claim that muddies the structure. But once you strip away the costume and see the skeleton, it's the same question you've solved 50 times before. That difficulty is not invention, it's assembly. It's how they design the questions. They are not building new weapons. They are combining existing ones more densely. And if you have already trained on the individual parts, the combination's not going to scare you. Now, this right here is the gap between students stuck in the 150s and 160s and those breaking into the 170s. It is not intelligence, it is pattern recognition. Last year, I had a student stuck at 163 for months, and we spent 2 tutoring sessions, just 2, labeling flaw types and practicing predicting the answer before looking at the choices. And she hit a 172 on her next practice test. Not because she got smarter in a single week, of course, but because she stopped solving new questions and started recognizing old ones. Now, here is the part that sounds completely backwards. Top scorers actually find the harder questions more comfortable than the medium difficulty ones. And I know that sounds crazy, but the thing is, the hardest questions are the purest expression of the LSAT's patterns. And the system is most visible when it's working the hardest. When you have internalized the system, that purity of recognition is your biggest advantage. And that is something most prep completely overlooks. Your emotional state on the LSAT matters way more than anybody tells you. When you hit a hard question and feel lost, your brain goes into panic mode. You rush, you second guess, you pick answers based on feeling rather than logic. And that panic is what actually costs you the points, not the difficulty of the question. But when you know, not hope, when you know that this hard question follows the same rules you've drilled hundreds of times, you're going to feel calm, you'll feel in control, and you'll look at a question everybody else thinks is impossible, and you'll think to yourself, I know exactly what this is, and you know how to solve it. And that is not false confidence, you have earned it through your prep. And so here's what I want you to do. Next time you sit down with a practice section, try this. Before you look at the choices, say out loud in your own words what the flaw is. Predict or prephrase what you need the right answer to say. And then look and check the choices. If you have been drilling the patterns, you're going to nail it. And the first time it works, it's going to kind of freak you out because you'll realize you're not solving the question, you are predicting it. Try this on logical reasoning first, then try it on reading comp. Because I tested whether this paradox holds for reading comp too, and good news, it does. It's the same rules, the same playbook of traps. And so right now, I'm actually creating video explanations for every single reading comp passage ever released, and I'm putting them on YouTube for free. You can already find some of those explanations on the live tab of the LSAT Unplugged YouTube channel because the patterns are there, and I want you to be able to see them. Now, if the LSAT's toughest questions scare you right now, I want you to hear me clearly. You are not scared because the questions are unpredictable. You're scared because you haven't seen the patterns yet, but the patterns are there, and they've always been there, and they are completely learnable. And that's what we show our students how to do at LSAT Unplugged through our live classes, our on-demand courses, small group coaching, and one-on-one coaching. We create for you a personalized study plan and walk you through every single question giving you trouble. Not to get to the right answer, but to show you the pattern behind the right answer so that next time you see it and the 50 times after that, you're going to recognize it on sight.